welcome to the special edition of Valley Beat. I'm Officer Nick Wolf.
I'm Officer Wayne Krieger. In this episode of Valley Beat, we'll be highlighting the 50-year anniversary of the Apple Valley Police Department.
We're going to take a look at where we've been, where we are now, and where we're going in the future.
Let's kick off the celebration by hearing from Chief John Rechtzigel.
Welcome to this special edition of Valley Beat, commemorating the 50-year anniversary of the Apple Valley Police Department. I was appointed its 6th chief in 2012 and have served for 27 years with the department. During this program, you'll get a chance to hear from some of my predecessors, and although we all have different backgrounds and styles, you'll notice one common thread that weaves its way through the department's history from chief to chief. That's an unbroken commitment by the department to serving the citizens of Apple Valley in a professional manner while continuously improving our people, processes, and technology.
Apple Valley and law enforcement in Apple Valley has a rich and interesting history. You know, Apple Valley wasn't always the city of Apple Valley. It started out in 1855 as Lebanon Township, which was incorporated in 1858. And at that time, the township board appointed 2 constables. They were part-time constables, W. Hardick and A.J. Elliott. And Lebanon Township continued with this form of policing until 1964. Remember that in the early 1960s in Apple Valley, it was primarily a rural community made up of a number of farms. And most of the duties of the constables actually concerned dealing with the farmers, and most of the types of calls they had were mediating property line disputes. The first real housing subdivision in Apple Valley was Palomino Hills on the northern part of our community, and that was actually, they began construction in that in the late 1950s. We saw an explosion of population beginning about 1960 when Orrin Thompson began building houses at what is now the intersection of County Road 42 and Garden View Drive. With the increase in people because of this construction and the increase in traffic, there was a demand for police services that the constable system could not keep up with, and that the Dakota County Sheriff's Office at that time could not handle adequately. So on September 9th, 1964, the town board created the Lebanon Police Department. The town board appointed as the first part-time police chief the constable, Gene Corrigan, and the first part-time patrol officer was Ken Rowley. They were paid $2.75 per hour. They used their own cars to patrol the city. The township did approve the purchase of a red light for the cars, and it wasn't until 1966 that the first squad car was purchased, a 1966 Plymouth Fury. And of course, it wasn't until 1968 that we actually had full-time employees.
The equipment, now this is going back a ways, so my memory might be failing me a little bit, but we worked in brown uniforms at that time that had a patch that said Apple Valley Police Department. We basically carried a gun, which we were responsible for buying ourselves. We had a nightstick, a big bulky radio, some mace and handcuffs. Quite similar to today, except the radio system today is so much easier to handle and smaller, not as heavy as what we had tried to lug around.
The kind of equipment that we used in the early days, the early 70s anyway, each officer had to purchase their own revolver. That was part of what you had to buy when you received the job offer. Believe it or not, we had a radar unit that, I don't know where they got it, but it had very limited range. And when it would break, the manager of Eden's Trailer Park had an electronics background, and he could fix it for us. And it is such a far cry from the radar and laser guns that the officers use on the street today. I also remember in the early days there was no SWAT team or mutual aid assistance group, and I had a deer rifle with a scope, and I know I practiced with it and one of the other officers practiced with it just in case we ever needed it. Thank God we didn't, but because there was no SWAT team back in those days. The first police chief for Apple Valley was Gene Corrigan. And Gene Corrigan, if I could explain in some short way, was as much a father figure to us, to the officers, as anything. He was just a fantastic man, very fair. He'd been a cattle trader, I believe, most of his life, and he ended up being a police chief, but just a fantastic man.
He was a very sensible man, and he always made you think things through before you took any action. He'd always want to know, is this the best route to go? Are there any other alternatives to this particular crime or traffic problem that we can implement? So, and he was a lot like a father for, I think, all of the officers who were working for Apple Valley at that particular time.
I can remember our first police office was about the size of this office. That was the whole police department. We didn't have any holding cells. When we arrested people, we'd handcuff them to a doorknob. If we arrested a drunk on the night of a city council meeting, we oftentimes would have to take the drunk through the council meeting to use the only restroom that was in the building at the time. And it's obvious with the facilities the police department has now, it's a far cry from what it was in the early 70s.
One of the things that I am really proud of is our facility. We went from a one-room facility for the police department back in 1969 to an addition onto the City Hall in 1970 something. That was supported by a bond referendum, and the members of the police department at that time and their wives had an open house and had an outline of the proposed facility out in the back of the City Hall so that people could see that and know what they were voting on. Anyway, that got approved. That improved our services and ultimately then led to this particular facility, which is 25,000 square feet and now is one of the premier police facilities in Dakota County.
Finally, and most important, are the personnel in the Apple Valley Police Department. Although we have seen significant turnover recently, amounting to roughly 1/4 of our workforce, hiring standards are much higher than ever, with a 4-year bachelor's degree being a requirement for hire. I'm also proud to say the men and women serving you today possess the same level of dedication and commitment as those who served them before. Before concluding, I'd like to thank you for watching our program. I'd like to share our department mission statement with you, which is protecting our community and improving quality of life through service, education, and enforcement.